Well, thanks very much for joining us today. Appreciate you coming in on this slightly rainy day in Seattle. We have a great presentation coming up for you from one of our alumni, Tyler Popham. Couple of business points to get in front of. First of all, if you have any difficulties with technological problems during the presentation, please do go ahead and send a message in chat. We'll take a look there. We're going to have time for plenty of questions. There is a Q&A tab, so you can go ahead and type your questions into that Q&A tab at any point during the presentation, and we will get to those questions as possible. So a little bit about ourselves here. Give me just one moment here. All right. Trying to advance. Sorry for the delay. All right. Having a little trouble advancing the slides here. There we go. My own logistical problems. I should have put it in chat. All right. Well, as you can see, we have those chat features available for those logistical problems. Again, use the Q&A at any point. We'll address those questions at the end. So a little bit about us. We are More Career Services. Our webpage is displayed there. If you are a business major or minor, we are here to serve you. We have a ton of services available. If you're not a business major or minor, you can also get services from the University Career Center. But please do contact us. We have a lot of ways to help you out in your job search. So to get to the meat of our presentation, we have Tyler Popham. And Tyler is a healthcare recruiter from the Seattle Children's Hospital and Foundation. He is someone who comes with a great deal of experience, a great background. He's somebody who has had a lot of experiences that he can share with us, and we're really excited to hear more from him today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass over to Tyler the controls, and he'll get started today. Thanks for joining us, Tyler.
All right, thanks for having me. I think I've got my my video on and microphone's working well, so I think I'm ready to go. So first of all, thank you again so much for having me. I'm really excited to present, especially getting to share some tips and tricks with my alma mater, U of O. As Keith said, I'm a healthcare recruiter for Seattle Children's Hospital, and being in recruiting, I think I've got a lot of tips and tricks that I think would be helpful for someone doing a job search, especially during kind of this fairly challenging time during the times of COVID-19. And so I kind of want to share a recruiter's perspective for what would be helpful for how to get hired right now. A little bit about myself. I graduated in 2011 from U of O. I was in the London College of Business. My degree was in business administration and sports marketing. I was a resident assistant for 3 years. I was an RA in Hamilton, Bean, and Barnhart and Riley, which was fantastic and taught me a lot about leadership and was a really good thing to work on while I was a student. I was also a conference assistant for U of O Housing for a year. And most notably, I think, I was a male practice player for the women's basketball team, the actual women's basketball team. So this was between 2007 and 2011. So I've been separated from the program for quite a while, but there's a picture of me there guarding one of the players in one of our scrimmages. And that was just an amazing experience to be involved with the program. And I'm going to claim that we won the 2020 national title, even though the tournament didn't actually happen, because we know we actually would have won. So I'm just so excited to see that program doing well. After I graduated in 2012, I started at Macy's in the executive development program. And I was a sales manager for 3 years. The executive development program essentially kind of helped bridge the gap between kind of an educational business environment and, being a business professional and executive level person for real. And I got a lot of amazing experience in that role. In 2015, I had the opportunity to join the talent acquisition function at Providence St. Joseph Health in Seattle. I started off as a coordinator, eventually got an opportunity to be a recruiter and program manager, kind of focusing on different aspects of the recruiting life cycle and, working in human resources. In 2017, I started a freelance position as a technical recruiter for 2 different San Francisco Bay Area construction companies, and I still do freelancing for them today, which is really cool because they're just different roles to work on and help out with. And in 2018 to today, my current position is I'm a healthcare recruiter for Seattle Children's Hospital and Foundation. I'm a recruiter for the RN residency program and the university recruiting function for the organization. A little bit about that role. Healthcare recruiting, and especially nursing recruiting specifically, is an extremely competitive recruiting environment. As you know, there is a huge need and demand for talent within healthcare, whether that's doctors or nurses or, radiation techs, all kinds of different things. So there is a very high demand for those services and professionals and a low supply because not a lot of people, or relatively speaking, not as many people go into medicine as go into other fields. So that leads to those positions being super competitive. They're very highly paid. They have a lot of choices and they can go anywhere. So being a recruiter in that environment is really tough because you have to develop really, really strong relationships, not only with the potential candidates, but their school programs. You have to go to career fairs. You have to, speak at campus events. And all of these things are things that I like to do anyway. So it makes me a good fit for that position, but it's competitive and there's a lot at stake. I hired personally like over 200 nurses last year, and that equates to like literally millions of dollars in productivity for the hospital. So there's a lot on our shoulders, but it's really energizing and it's fun and it's super rewarding personally and professionally. So something that I'm really excited about, and I'm happy to be part of that organization. A little bit about my career journey from retail to healthcare. As I said, I started at Macy's, which, as you know, is a for-profit organization. It's a large company. It's a national brand in the retail industry. And being for-profit, that company focuses on selling basically goods and services like apparel, home goods, cosmetic products, things like that, all of that for-profit. So the money that they make on doing all of that activity, they're able to distribute not only within the business, but outside of the business as well to shareholders and that kind of stuff to generate money for people involved in the business. One of the things that really inspired me to make the transition to working for a nonprofit or working in the healthcare industry was I really wanted to have kind of a positive effect on the world. And so in the healthcare industry, you're not selling goods, you're not selling cosmetic products or apparel, you're selling patient care. So you're providing care to patients, and that money being in a nonprofit, the extra money that you get from that goes back into the business to be able to provide care in other areas. So that's something that personally I'm really energized about and really excited to work for a company that's doing good in the world. The other thing that I would mention as well is just because it's a nonprofit organization does not mean that it is not a big business or a big money-making opportunity, if you want to call it that. Providence St. Joseph Health and Seattle Children's literally does billions of dollars in economic activity There's billions of dollars into payroll and functions and all of the stuff that makes that business happen. So when you think nonprofit, it's not necessarily something that's small. It can be really big, and those are big businesses. So anyways, I went from Macy's to Providence St. Joseph Health, and then working in that Seattle area, I knew that Seattle Children's was an amazing organization, heard so much about it. We would lose candidates to Seattle Children's because they had a fantastic reputation. And so eventually an opportunity became available there, and I was really interested to join that organization. And that's where I'm at now, and it's amazing. So as you guys all think about applying to, your various new positions, you're graduating. It's an extremely exciting and inspiring time, but also a very hectic time, very nerve-wracking time. I really wanted to kind of give you guys an example of what I thought was some of the best things that you as a U of O business school grad are bringing to the table when you're applying to positions. Because I think they're really, really amazing things that employers are really looking for. As a business school graduate, you have strong foundational understanding for the pillars of every business. You've taken classes in accounting, marketing, HR, econ, entrepreneurship, data analytics. These are all amazing things that are literally, as I said, pillars for every single business. And so, someone who's potentially like coming from a different educational background, they might do amazing in those businesses, but you're going to understand these business functions for like just about every single business you can possibly imagine, because every single business needs to have these foundations and needs to have these principles, executed well, and you being on their team is going to be an asset for them. So really feel proud about the background that you're coming from and the skills that you're bringing to the table, because they're going to serve you well. So applying for jobs in a challenging market. As we know, this is a pretty tough job market right now. Because of COVID-19 and other external factors, there's a lot that goes into economic activity kind of being reeled in a little bit. And one of the things that a business does when things are challenging is reel in their costs a little bit. And one of the easier costs to sort of manage is something like payroll. So that's why you'll see something, or you'll hear news about layoffs. And certainly if they're laying people off sometimes, they're probably not going to be hiring at the same time, because that just doesn't make sense to be laying people off because there's not work or there's not the right type of work, and then hiring in that same field. So there is a little bit of a reeling in that's happening right now. Hopefully this is something that's going to be temporary. One thing that I would mention is that while some industries are experiencing a downturn right now because of the shift in focus and what's a priority right now, others are expanding. So things like, teleservices. Think about how much demand there is for Zoom conference calls or WebEx conference calls, things that are being done remote right now. Those companies are hiring people left and right because there's an amazing demand for those services right now. Also, things like virtual payments, things like the Cash App or Venmo or things like that. There's enormous demand that's expanding because of world events. So just because in general more things have been reeled in, some things are expanding as well. So there is opportunity in tough markets too, if you know where to look for it. Persistence is key in a job search. And I say this because I think as a student and, being younger earlier on in your career, you're really used to kind of seeing things happen a lot faster or more quickly than might be the case when you actually get out into the business professional world. You might submit an application and that might take a couple of weeks to a couple of months before someone responds to that application. Sometimes they don't respond to that application at all, and that can get really, really frustrating. You're wondering, like, what am I doing wrong? A lot of times it's things that are completely outside of your control. All of these jobs have different things that are happening behind the scenes and reasons for why they might move forward with one candidate over another. And sometimes it's fair and sometimes it's kind of not really fair. You can't really control some of those things, but what you can control is how persistent you are and your ability to stay positive in that environment. And if you just stick with it and stay at it, eventually the right opportunity will find you or you'll find the right opportunity. So you just got to stick with it there. Your dream job's usually not available right out of college. A lot of people probably think they're going to graduate with a business degree and they're going to go right into a senior level marketing position and they're going to have 100 direct reports and they're going to be like, a shark on Shark Tank and do all of those things. And that happens for a very, very, very small percentage of people, but for the vast majority, it's not really a reality. You need to probably take an entry-level position and work your way up, not only developing some of those skills, but sometimes like going through the ranks and going through, rounds of promotions and earning trust and getting those bullet points on your resume to make it more convincing to a future employer that you're the right person for that opportunity. Your career is a marathon and it's not a sprint. And so, as I said, it's okay to take an entry-level job, viewed as an opportunity to gain those skills. And eventually, at the end of the marathon, you might be in that senior marketing executive vice president position, but it'll probably take time. Soft skills are really, really important, and I think something that are underrated in today's job environment as we're evaluating candidates. Things like time management, your ability to be dependable, how to deal with a challenging customer, how to work on a team. Those are things that are not super easy to put as a bullet point on a resume or explain that you've had experience in these types of things, but it's something that comes off in the way that you communicate, how confident you are, and just sometimes it's just something that you have to build with repetition. So soft skills are something to definitely consider and think about continuously and making conscious effort to develop throughout your career. Bloom where you're planted and be patient professionally. Sometimes you might be taking a position where you're not super excited about it, but it's important for the long-term focus on your career that you're really successful. The first position that I had as a sales manager at Macy's was I was a sales manager of the tabletop department. So I had to work with the team that was selling plates and dishes and tablecloths and table mats, and not super exciting. It's not, something that really jazzes people up, but that's not important. What's important is about the way that you approached it, the fact that you really, really wanted to be successful, learn as much as you can about those types of things, because that product knowledge or that industry knowledge is going to help you sell those things. And that's the bottom line. It doesn't matter if you're selling, forks and dishes the same way you might be selling high-level computer services at a different company. It's just how effective are you at that? Building and leveraging your personal and professional networks, that's huge. The people that you know and the people that you work with today might be the people that might recommend you for a job in the future. So always have your best foot forward and, be that impressive person. So when those opportunities happen years down the road, people will be thinking about you. And then I've got an extra slide about this, but look up the job descriptions of a senior level job that you aspire towards. So as I said previously, you're probably not going to be able to get your dream job right out of college right away. Sometimes that takes years to develop the skills and develop the relationships needed to get to that type of level. But if you look at a job description for a senior level position, what are the things you can learn from that job description that will help you in making decisions to take entry level positions along the way? So, for example, this morning I looked up a position on Nike.com and I found a business analytics manager. So this is a senior level executive position. What do you need for this? You need a bachelor's degree. Check. That's what most of you guys are going to have in business, so that's fantastic. You need, for this position, 5 years of experience in business analytics or through the master's degree. Obviously, you can't get that experience if no one gives you an opportunity. So right off the bat, it's kind of like you don't meet the minimum qualifications for here. But what are the other things that we can learn from it that'll help you, be a better candidate for this someday in the future? Advanced skills in Excel. I know some of that is taught in the business school, but you probably need to be an expert in things like equations and VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and making graphs and a ton of things that, like, I'm pretty good at Excel, but things that I don't even understand or know. To be a great candidate for this position, you're going to really need to be able to speak to all of those things. Experience in ETL, more technical jargon that you're going to need to be able to speak to, and so you'll need experience in the industry to know what that stuff is and be able to tell stories about how you've worked in that environment. Other technologies like AWS experience, SQL. The big one, and the reason why I highlighted it in red, like, what is this job really about? It's about translating and communicating data into a story so you can tell senior leaders how to make the best business decision with what the data is telling us, what's coming in. All of these raw numbers and trends and a graph, what does it all mean, and what's the decision that needs to be made? What new supplies do we need to buy to be able to deal with new demand or shifting trends? That's what it's all about. And so your journey potentially taking entry-level positions, such as entry-level business analyst, you can look those up in some of these career sites. There's tons of opportunity for that. So if you want to be this business analytics manager at Nike, you might take some of those entry-level positions along the way that will help you hit some of these bullet points over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. So when you're actually ready to apply for a job, what's the best place to go? How do you do that? How do you get your resume out there? You know, it's not 50 years ago where you're walking, you know, door to door to different businesses and handing out your resume. Today, you're looking at things like these major career sites like Indeed and LinkedIn. I starred those because I think those are definitely like the #1 and the #2 professional sites where not only you as a candidate want to be, and you want to make sure your presence is strong on those platforms, but the employers are on those sites as well. So Seattle Children's, for example, or Providence, the companies that I've been involved with, we have accounts with these search engines, with Indeed and LinkedIn, that help us kind of navigate all of the different resumes that are out there and be able to reach out to people. So know that the businesses are involved in these things and they have a vested relationship with them. So that's where you want to be as a candidate. Glassdoor is fantastic. It helps you find out information about a company, like what they do, what they sell, salary ranges for positions. That's super important when you're talking about like salary negotiations and just being informed. Facebook, not so much, but I do think that sometimes, I know I see this, I have friends on Facebook who will post about different job opportunities that they have at their company, and usually they're kind of entry-level jobs, but sometimes that's that foot in the door. So you never know. You just want to be, you know, maybe have your eye on a site like that because those opportunities come through every now and then. Handshake is huge. I know Handshake is kind of the main career platform for university students, and like I said, different organizations have relationships with Handshake as well. For example, when I post an RN residency position that we're looking for applicants for, I'm also posting it on Handshake so that university level talent, those students or those future professionals are seeing that and hopefully applying for our jobs. Google is really helpful. And then company or career sites, I started that one as well because you can obviously go straight to the company, Nike.com or SeattleChildren's.org or whatever that is, and actually go to their career site, and then you can see sort of like the actual source of truth for what they have posted, what the requirements are, and applying for those. And then lastly, talent agencies. I don't think as a student this was something that I understood, but a lot of times you might have to take a contract with a talent agency to start at a company as your kind of foot in the door. So for example, for a lot of entry-level positions at Nike, I know they work through a talent agency. So you're working at Nike, but you're not necessarily a Nike employee. You're doing this through the talent agency. So they can kind of, Nike can get to know you and see how you do. And if you're doing awesome, then they might extend an offer to keep you on the team for real and actually be a Nike employee. Amazon does this, Seattle Children's does this. Both opportunities when I started at Providence and at Seattle Children's were through talent agencies. So it's just kind of how business works. So just be aware of that. Some application tips, I would say having an up-to-date and really good-looking resume, that's always going to be required. So utilize services like the More Career Center and you know, those resources on campus to make sure that your resume is looking great. Cover letters are usually optional, but sometimes they're needed. So read the job posting to know if that's something that's going to be needed, and just to have a high attention to detail. You want to make sure that your resume specifically is whenever possible tailored to what you're applying towards. So, you know, the bullet points on your experience is matching the bullet points on what they're listing as requirements for the position. A lot of times there's job screening questions that are just like multiple choice. Those are really easy on applications, so you just fill those out. Those are more informational. Minimum versus preferred qualifications. Kind of view the minimums as like you need to hit all of these things, or you need to hit pretty close to all of these things to be considered. So for example, for nursing, I'll have experience working. You'll need your RN license. If you don't have an RN license, I can't move forward with you. You'll need experience working with kids because we're a children's hospital. If you don't have experience working with kids, it might be hard to move forward with you. So sometimes there's requirements and sometimes there's maybes. And don't be afraid to kind of throw yourself out there if you're really, really close to the minimums. Depending on the position, if they really, really need talent, they might actually consider applicants who are like really, really close. But it depends on what the requirement is. If it's like a healthcare license, like I said, I can't consider a healthcare candidate if they don't have the license because that's illegal. But if they have 4 years of experience instead of 5 years experience, like, okay, yeah, whatever, we can probably make that work. Online assessments. So depending on the job that you might be applying for, sometimes they'll have you take an online assessment, like a math test or like a computer science test. I want to highlight on these, do not cheat on these. You might think that you might be able to Alt-Tab or bring up another window and, Google search the answer for this question or try to use a calculator to make some of those things work. There's a lot of technology behind a lot of these online assessments. And sometimes as an employer, when you set this up with this technology, it will tell you how long it took for a person to answer this question, if they had other tabs open, if they Google searched something at the time, what they Google searched. It's very, very kind of Big Brother-esque. And so there's a lot of stuff that could get you disqualified if you're trying to cheat on one of these online assessments. So I would say just in general, don't try to cheat, just be honest about what you know and how good you're at it. And if you had to cheat on the online assessment to get the job, you're probably not a very good fit for the job in the first place. So maybe, continue to develop those skills or find other ways to be successful at that. Can you get a referral within the company? If yes, please do that. There was some research done recently that if someone gave you a referral, you were 15 times more likely to get hired for that position. So, if you know someone at the company, you can send an email to the recruiter or talk to the manager or something just to help your name get to the top of the pile in the giant list of resumes. It's not really a real pile, it's really all online. That can be a huge boost for you. And is there an opportunity to get your foot in the door elsewhere in the company? So internal applicants will often get a preference. So you might not be able to get that senior level marketing position now, but if you were an entry level marketing position today instead, years down the road, you'll be internal and they'll know more about you, so they'll be able to consider you more easily. Interview tips, obviously don't be late, dress well, match the environment. For example, a tech company might be a little bit more relaxed. You might be able to come in with just a button up and be pretty good. If you're in a more traditional business function like finance or banking, you might want to go with the full suit and tie and all of that kind of stuff. Just match the environment. Be ready to answer the most common interview question, tell me about yourself. Be very conversational about that, practice that, do some practice interviews with a friend, with a colleague, with the Career Services Center at U of O, that they're a fantastic resource. When they ask you interview questions, be ready to use specific examples from your experience. It's really hard to kind of evaluate someone when they're very general about what they're talking about. But if they said, I did this and it had this type of result, that's what they're looking for. That's very tangible. And then in all of your answers, sound prepared and confident, but not rehearsed and memorized. You don't want to sound like a robot, or you don't want to sound like you're reading off of a script in your head. That doesn't inspire a lot of confidence from the interviewer when they're listening to you that you really know what you're talking about, just that you're able to regurgitate information. So really, again, if you know what you're talking about, you're going to be able to be more conversational with it, and that's what they're looking for. The STAR method is really helpful. So if they're giving you an example of, tell me about a time when you worked on X project, or you were working through this challenge, how did you solve that? So you can use the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, result. Situation was, I was dealing with this business challenge. The task was, I solved this business challenge. I took this action by physically or, remotely doing this. And the result was, we increased sales. Or sometimes the result is actually that was a terrible decision, but this is what I learned from it. So I've underlined result because I think that's extremely important to say what the result was, because they want to know that it was effective or not effective and what you learned from it. And also, finally, it's okay to not know the answer to a question, but if you don't know the answer, communicate how you think you would solve that problem anyway. Who would you go to for help? Where would you go to find out research about that topic? Because a lot of, working the day-to-day is you don't know the answer to something, you go find it. And just kind of wrapping up here, salary negotiations. So sometimes salary conversations can happen in the very, very first phone screen with a recruiter. So kind of know that ahead of time and be ready. Don't be caught off guard by a question like that. If you say your target's in a range, expect they're likely going to, if you got an offer that's going to be near the bottom of the range. So if you said, I want to make somewhere between 60,000 to 80,000, the recruiter or the manager here is like, great, I can pay this person 60,000, no problem. So maybe they'll offer you 60 or 61 or something. If you have an actual number, if your real number is to be able to feed my family, I need 75 or something, whatever that number is, just communicate that honestly. It'll save everyone a lot of time. You can find the salary range for tons of positions on sites like Glassdoor, so you do that research ahead of time. The competitive landscape of a candidate pool can really shape how much negotiation is possible. If it's an entry-level position, maybe not so much, because there's going to be hundreds of applicants, and so they're going to say if this person wants too much money, just go on to the next person. But if you're an in-demand field like tech or medicine or engineering, they won't want to lose you. So if you can potentially ask for a little bit more and have a little bit more of that wiggle room. So just understand the context of what you're asking for. And then total compensation includes more than just your hourly rate or salary. You can get bonuses. You can have really, really great healthcare benefits, retirement and discounts if you work for a company that sells stuff. So factor all of that into the total compensation because it's more than just your salary. And then lastly, be honest, kind, and firm, and don't play games. You know, recruiters and managers don't like it when you're playing games, and so just be firm and honest. Parting thoughts, again, just really quickly, I'll zoom through this. You know, be resilient and positive in your job search. As I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Every connection to your network is an opportunity. Always have your best positive foot forward. You never know when that person that you worked with from a company 2 companies ago recommends you for a job at their new company, and that ends up being your dream job. So always try to be impressive. Always try to do your best personally and professionally. Always be willing to listen to new opportunities. I was willing to I was really enjoying my job at Providence, and a recruiter reached out to me about the opportunity at Children's, and I knew great things about it. And so even though I was happy, I'm like, yeah, tell me a little bit about this. And I'm so glad that I did because that helped me get where I was. And sometimes the biggest jumps in your career will require you switching roles or companies. So you might continue in the same company for years and years and years and only get the 2% raise, the 3% raise, whatever. When you switch companies, that's when you can ask for right off the bat, you know, 10,000 more than you are making or 20,000 more. That's really how you can make those big jumps. Don't fall behind the times. Innovation is always happening. Technology is always advancing. You always want to stay on top of those things so you can continue to adapt with the times and advance in your career. In your profession, like volunteer for stretch assignments or taking on more responsibility. Sometimes people leave the company and they're like, who's going to do this? You can raise your hand and say, like, I think I can do that. I don't know the most about it right now, but I can learn, and you guys need somebody, so why not? So then you'll get more responsibility on your plate. You'll gain that valuable experience, and that'll help you in the future in your career. Try to find a job or a company that inspires and energizes you. I love working in healthcare because, as I said previously, I love that the work that I do, even though I'm not the one actually giving like hands-on direct patient care, I'm helping hire the people who do. So I really do feel good about the work that I'm doing, and that, you know, makes it easier in tough times when a project might be really tough or, you know, results might be hard. It's like, you know, I'm doing good work and I'm helping people, so that makes me feel good. And so whatever that is for you, like, try to find that. Couple more things. Be nice. Nobody wants to work with or for a brilliant jerk. So, you know, just consider how kind you are to people. Like, teamwork is really, really important. And then give back and be generous. Like, when you make it, like, make sure, you know, you know, go back, remember where you came from, and try to give back to people that you can help. And that'll make you feel good about yourself, and hopefully continue to do great work in the future. And that was it. Thank you so much for, again, having me, and go Ducks.
Fantastic. Great information. Not only great information about your journey, you know, throughout your career, but also great information about taking the next steps in your career. So we appreciate the perspective. We'll go ahead, and we've got some questions that are coming in. Go ahead and feel free to pop those questions into the Q&A section. And once we get a couple of those going, let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. We have a question. I'm looking for an entry-level job, but I don't meet 100% of the qualifications. What should I do?
That's a great question. I think have an understanding, again, of the context of what those minimum qualifications might be. Sometimes there are things that are more deal breakers than others. For example, like I said, a professional license that would make it illegal for you not to be able to have that that certification and take that position. And sometimes it might be you have just slightly less years of experience or not quite as much exposure in this one thing that might be a preferred qualification, or you just perceive that, like, I think I can do this anyway. The way that you can potentially dispel that is address that in your cover letter, maybe make a bullet point that is kind of related to that in your resume. If you can actually get in contact with the recruiter or whoever is the decision maker for that position, it would actually be really, really impressive if you said, you know, I noticed this on the job description, and I'd like to kind of talk about where I'm just falling just a little bit short, but here's why I think I'm a great fit anyway. And the fact that you've done that research and you're upfront about that, I think would be really impressive. And, you know, if a candidate did that for me when I was evaluating for them on a position and it wasn't one of those deal breaker bullet points, I'd be like, yeah, let's take a chance on this person. Some of the best people we've ever hired have been people that we've taken a chance on. So don't let that discourage you, and just go for it. The worst thing they can do is say no, and then you're just on to the next opportunity.
And it seems like being bold is especially important in this current environment with hiring.
Absolutely.
Great. Your second question that's come in. So my family is pressuring me to find my dream career job and not to settle. Did you ever have to actually navigate family, friends, community pressure, and how did you actually do it?
That's a great question. So as I mentioned in one of my previous slides, I graduated in 2011 in the summer in June, and my position with Macy's actually didn't start until I think it was January of 2012. So there was really kind of 6 months and, you know, months that happened in between while I was applying for other things, trying to figure out what I was going to do, and it took some time. And it was really discouraging and a really, I would say, tough time in my life when I went from, you know, I would say like being super engaged on campus. As I said, I was an RA and I was doing a lot of things to, I graduated and I went back home to Oregon, and you know, my home was in Lincoln City, Oregon, which is on the beach, and there's not a lot to do there. And I'm just like, well, now what? I don't have a job. I don't have any money. I have a ton of student debt. And I felt pressure personally, and I felt pressure and expectations from family to say, like, so, you know, when are you going to go do something? And it just takes time. Like you can't always be worried about what other people think. The only thing that you can do is kind of control your effort level. So you got to get out there, apply for things. It's okay to take some of these entry-level jobs that maybe you didn't need that degree on, just to kind of keep yourself busy and build experience. You know, I worked as a sales associate at Nike at the mall in Lincoln City because, you know, I really wanted to work for Nike, and I thought that was going to kind of help get me an in, and, you know, I'd be an internal applicant. And also I needed to eat, so you needed to make some money while you're doing that. So don't worry so much. Like it might take time. It might take months. It might even take a year or two or longer or something to get what you think your dream job is, but you'll get there eventually. And especially right now, like if anyone should be given some slack given the current hiring environment, it's this class right now. So, you know, just do what you got to do and just stay positive and just stick with it.
Fantastic. Yeah, and it's definitely, again, in the environment that we're having people hired into, it's a time to take that knowledge into account. Malia asks, you mentioned that you studied sports business at the U of O. Do you feel like you were still prepared when you moved into careers in retail and healthcare after college, considering that you focused on a different field of study in the business school?
Yeah, that's a great question. At least for Macy's specifically, I can say that my experience going through the sports marketing program at U of O was extremely valuable for my Macy's career. You know, they don't only hire business majors at Macy's. You know, in fact, I would say maybe that not even 50% of the people that are working there are business majors. You know, you worked with history majors and you worked with, you know, people in, you know, liberal arts or science or whatever. But the fact that I understood what marketing was, then how to promote products, you know, how to learn about products to kind of sell things in a compelling way, like the accounting things behind that, like I understood how to read a balance sheet, and I could read all the different sales reports with a level of understanding that maybe someone without a business school background probably wouldn't. That was actually one of the one of the interview evaluation things that they did when we got to the in-person interview, they actually handed us a real sales report. And these are all these numbers and these grids, all these different departments, cosmetics and shoes and whatever. And they had, plus 10%, minus 5% profit numbers and everything. And they're like, so given this, research this for a minute or two. Where do you think the biggest opportunities are? What would you focus on if you were in charge of this store? Where do we need to put extra resources to make sure the store is profitable? And I was able to answer that question really, really well because I think I had that understanding of finance and what, what it was going to take from an accounting level perspective to turn a profit there. So those skills will serve you very, very well. And they continue to serve me well in healthcare too, because I think everything I've learned from, business school, like I said, Excel and being super organized and how to talk to customers and using some of the Microsoft Office products that are really important in business school that, maybe less so for other majors. They serve me well every single day.
That pivot is just so key, I guess, at this point, being able to kind of show yourself as multifaceted and a multi-tool player is a really important one. Some great questions coming in. Dawa asks, how did you connect with a recruiter at Children's and what made them reach out to you specifically?
That's a really good question, and I think it's kind of just a unique thing about me. So being a recruiter or being in talent acquisition at Providence, where I was before I was at Seattle Children's, one of the things that I learned about being a recruiter is you need to expand your network. And one of the really important places for your network was LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, I want a million connections. I want to connect with all of these candidates. I want to, I want potential employers to be able to connect with me because you just understand how valuable that platform was. So I was connecting with a lot of people, sharing updates and then leveraging that platform that, the way you're supposed to do it professionally. And just randomly, to be completely honest, just randomly, a recruiter from one of the agencies here in Seattle reached out to me because she had a partnership with Seattle Children's, and they said, we need a healthcare recruiter who can do these specific things. And her job was to find people who kind of met what they were looking for. So she did a LinkedIn search, and she's like, I need people with this years of experience and experience with this and this and this. And somehow I was on her list just because I kept my profile updated and I had clicked the box that said I'd be interested in more opportunities. So she reached out to me, somebody that I don't even know, but she sent me a message and I was like, I get a lot of messages all the time, but I was like, this one sounds cool. And it was for Children's, and I knew Children's was an awesome company because I worked in the area and I just heard amazing things about it. So I said, I like where I'm at, but I'm willing to listen. So I had a phone call conversation with her and liked what I heard, and she recommended me for an in-person interview, and I got the job. And now here I am. And
thus the magic began, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have time for a couple more questions. Lots of great ones here. One of the questions about your days at the University of Oregon, was there a specific class or classes or project that you recall being really helpful to get your first job out of college? And do employers care about the projects that students are doing, and should they share it in the interview?
That's a great question. I can't remember the specific class. I think I probably remember maybe the pillar that it was in, but I remember taking the decision. It was called Decision Sciences at the time. I've been told that it's called Data Analytics now, but I took one of those classes and I had to do a project which was essentially working on something with Microsoft Access and with statistics. And I think what we did was we looked at some hypothetical hotel that was on Miami Beach, and you had all these different variables. You had ones that were on the 50th floor. You had ones that were close to the elevator. You had ones that were, the view of the parking lot or the view of the ocean. And using Microsoft Access in this statistical package, which I think was called S++ or something like that. I can't even remember what it was. But you had to use statistics to be able to create a model that would create predictive pricing based off of the variables for, they listed 1,000 rooms and they had all that information there. And then they listed rooms with just some of the variables filled out. And you had to say, with these variables, how much should this room be? And that was incredible because that was real business world, like statistics stuff where you had to crunch numbers and work with a team. And your answer is not going to be exact because who knows, like you can price anything, whatever. Like that's how the real world works. It's not, everything's not determined by equations and formulas, but you come up with something that is as close as you think that it could be, and you make arguments for why. And I think that was really good from a business perspective, because in the real world, you have to make decisions based off of what you have, and you don't always have all of the information, but you have a lot of it, and you just have to tell a compelling story and give really compelling reasons for why, and hopefully make good decisions based off of that. So that's something that stood out to me. And Keith, I think there was a second part to that question. I don't see it on my screen. What was the part that I'm missing here?
So the second piece was, do employers really care about that, and should I share it during the interview?
They do, and I think if you can speak really intelligently to what you learned from a certain project, you know, that one always stands out to my mind. And, you know, shoot, it's been like 10 years since I actually did that project, but I'm always thinking about things like that. And I can think of all different ways where, you know, you have certain variables. And especially as a student, as a new grad, one of the things that you just have to kind of recognize about yourself as a young professional is you just haven't been in the business world, and so you don't have a lot of tangible experiences you can speak to, but you've worked on these projects, you know, you've worked on these different clubs where you've done things that you've helped with businesses. Even if it's not at a professional level, even if it's at a student level, you can show what you learned, and you can show the employer your critical thinking processes and how you solve problems, and honestly, even how you've driven results, even if you haven't done that in a professional position. And that's all they really care about. All businesses are essentially, you know, when they're looking for posting a position and getting someone to fill it, they're looking for someone who can do the job. And if you can do the job and maybe you have a little bit less experience than somebody on their resume, but you know, you're more energetic, or you're able to communicate a little bit better, or you're just able to tell that story, they're going to go, who cares what the experience level is? If you can do the job and you're the best person for that job, you know, that's how they're going to make the decision, and that's what they care about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have time for one more question. It's a little bit about kind of a broad overview for you. If you had to attribute your success at the companies you've worked for to one skill or trait, what would that be?
Really good question. Without overthinking it too much, I think I would, one skill or trait, I think I would probably have to say a willingness to just kind of just jump in there, even if I don't necessarily know what that is. You know, sometimes people will describe that as something like fake it until you make it, or, you know, just kind of being adaptable and like working on the fly. There were opportunities at Providence, you know, one specifically came to mind where I kind of shared this in the presentation, but I'll be more specific. Someone on our team left the organization for various reasons, and they were in charge of a certain program. It was actually our talent acquisition relocation program, and they left for one reason or another, and someone at the organization needed to do this. I had no experience in relocation. I didn't know what I was talking about, but I worked kind of alongside this person, and I thought, like, yeah, I could do that, and they needed somebody for it, and the business couldn't give me any more money for it, but I'm like, this would be a really great opportunity to add an extra bullet point on my resume, you know, do some really, really great work, you know, make more connections within the company. Like in that position, I actually got to work alongside like VPs and like all the way up to almost the whole president of the whole company, like one level below that, because I was dealing with like huge finance stuff. And it was because I had a willingness to just jump in there and figure it out. And, you know, obviously work at a high level, you're given a little bit of grace. But I wasn't afraid to make a mistake. I wasn't afraid to not know what I was doing for a short amount of time, because I had confidence in myself that I'd be able to figure it out. And I had a great team around me that I knew was going to support me. So, you know, don't be afraid, take calculated risks every now and then, and just, you know, take every opportunity and make the most out of it, because those opportunities to add bullet points to your resume, you know, that's what helps you a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road to get your next big opportunity that can really kind of make that professional leap for you.
Tyler, this has been some fantastic background and information and perspective. And I want to just ask, you know, do you have any kind of parting thoughts to send students along their way as they think about their careers, they think about what you've shared?
Yeah, as I said, remember that it's a marathon and not a sprint. Always kind of keep focused on the long term, like make the most out of every single opportunity that you have. And then I think especially for right now, given the business environment, just stick with it. It is okay to, take lower level opportunities or even things that, you don't necessarily need that college degree for right now. There's tons of opportunities out there to continue to work hard and gain experience, and just don't get discouraged. I remember, again, like I said, I was pretty discouraged right after I graduated, and it was a tough time, but it all works out for the best. Like, I look back on some of the times that I had, before I found that first position, and I think that resilience and grit that I learned from that tough time is something that I rely on today all the time when I have a really tough project, or I'm thinking like, I cannot fail at this specific thing. Like, do I need to pull an all-nighter to like finish this project, or do I need to like go the extra mile? And that's, like I said, determination and grit that I learned from a tough time. So, the business reality is this is a little bit of a tough time right now, but learn from it, like help it kind of fuel you. And hopefully in a couple of years, like you'll look back on that like I do and be like, that really helped me get where I was going.
Fantastic. Such great perspective. And, we genuinely appreciate the time you spent with us today, Tyler. And we hope if it's okay with you, students can reach out to you on LinkedIn and connect there. It's been a great afternoon of getting some great information, and remember that you can always visit More Career Services online. We are here to help you. We encourage you to come back on May 13th. We have another Alumni Insights with a alum who has worked with the NFL and Adidas. Again, thank you to Tyler, and we hope that you have a terrific afternoon, and thanks for logging in today. Thanks again, Tyler.
Thank you.
Cheers.